All right. Hi there, and welcome, all you beautiful, lovely people. Hope y'all are having an amazing day out there. Here I have an amazing guest, Mr. As I like to call him, as I'm sure a lot of kids from our cross country team would call him, Mr. Jordan Newcomer. Um, you know, he, if I'm being honest, from my personal experience, he was the first time I ever experienced having a coach as a role model. He was an excellent coach, and he taught us more of just life in general, not just about running cross country or being a part of a basketball team. He taught us teamwork, things that would actually apply and be useful in life. And he's a big reason of why I've matured into the person I've matured into, and why I'm here right now. So yeah, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Coach, just give him your background and all that, and why you became a teacher and why you became a coach.
All right. Well, yeah, like Jesus said, I'm Coach Newcomer. Uh, what actually got me into coaching was I ran cross country in college, and I had a math degree. But if I'm being super honest and super frank, I didn't do any internships, and by the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to. I knew coaching would be something I'd enjoy doing, but originally I wanted to go into actuarial work and use my math degree kind of on the corporate side of the world. And um, out of not really just kind of just not being prepared, if I'm being super honest, I got into coaching, but it ended up being a really, really huge blessing. But yeah, so for my first year teaching, spent a year just teaching and being a volunteer coach out in Quinlan. And my second year, I got a job out in Sunnyvale where I got the opportunity to coach middle school girls athletics, which was quite the experience. As I was quite literally learning one of the sports that I was coaching, but something that after spending some time and I learned a lot of valuable stuff and grew a lot in that position. And uh, after moving back from a short time in Florida, a job got opened up a job at Rowlett High School, and just ended up becoming a huge blessing for my wife and I. And just basically got the opportunity to coach basketball, which turned into coaching track as well, and eventually became cross country. And so, kind of got to coach all the things that I did growing up as an athlete in high school and a little bit in college, and even got to teach AP Stats and Algebra 2, which are some of my favorite math courses as well. So, really just a blessing. And I could sit here and tell you I had it all planned out, but the real truth is God kind of made a path for my wife and I, and definitely brought us through some hard circumstances to get into teaching. And I mean, it really has been a huge blessing in my life. And I've moved on from teaching right now, but it's something that I definitely look back on with um, a lot of joy for sure.
Well, yeah, no, I honestly, I'm very grateful for having you as a coach. Like I said, you know, if there's somebody that I can just say is an overall good coach, it's Coach Newcomer. Doesn't matter what he was coaching, what he was, doing. He was just a naturally blessed at teaching students because he looked at the bigger picture. He didn't just worry about, teaching us how to run right or running technique, how to become better runners. He teaches us how to become better people. I remember one time that really stuck with me was we were doing I think my first 4 mile run, and we're in Texas, so it was about 110 degrees. And Coach Newcomer does not care. If it's 110 degrees, if your heart's beating, you're good enough to run. And I think I was on my third mile on the mile loop. And because of the heat, I really felt like I couldn't go. I remember I had to stop running. I had told Coach Newman, like, "Hey man, like I'm done for the day. I don't want to run anymore. I don't want to keep going." And instead of kind of just telling me, "Oh no, keep going," or "Oh no, you have to keep going," he kind of just told me, "All right, if you think that's all you got, that's all you got." And it's funny because that moment really stuck with me because it made me realize that you put it in my hands. You gave me the power to choose whether I could go another mile or I could stop. And if I'm being honest, I was just being lazy. Running's not my passion. I don't enjoy running. You know, if I'm being honest, the whole time I ran, it was because Coach Newcomer would make me run. But but yeah, I remember since that day, it made me go like, man, you know, I kind of disappointed in him because I could tell you expected more out of me, and that's really the whole reason I ran. It's just to meet that standard of expectation that you set for us because I know you expected the best out of me. And yeah, honestly, I think that Coach Stricker was truly a blessing to Raleigh High School. You know, I'm not sure how he taught his math class, but from what I heard from others, it was an easy class. They would. I remember I would talk to friends like Manny. Manny would always tell me like statistics isn't that hard, man. Like just pay attention in class, and he'd show you how to do it. And then he used to go on the other hand and talk to someone like Ryan, where they'd be like, man, like Coach Newcomer's giving me so much homework, or he's just giving me a test every time I go into class, and I'd be like, man, I heard that class was easy, man. I heard all you have to do is pay attention, and then be like, you know, yeah, but I don't want to pay attention, man. That's what the argument always was, you know. It was always just, you know, them just not paying attention, and that's the whole reason they were failing, you know, your class. So, if you'd like to dive into what started pushing you away from being a teacher, because I kind of remember the area and I remember the time and I remember you know kind of what was happening at the time. Yeah, but if you'd like to go ahead and dive into that,
Yeah. And just kind of once again, just being transparent and honest. Like I said before, I look back at my coaching and teaching time, and it was a huge blessing. And Lord willing, I would love to have an opportunity to do that sometime down the road again. Truthfully, it was kind of a interesting time in life for me. Um, it's kind of a culmination of a lot of things, but um, at the time, I had previously a few months, well, going into that 2021-2022 school year, um, just a lot of pressures and kind of a lot of stresses had built up. Um, just, I think some of the expectations of trying to keep things at the level I expected them to be at, which I always tried to model what I wanted out of the people that I was coaching and teaching. And so I tried to hold it myself to the same standard. Um, but during that time, just felt a lot of anxiety. Had some deep rooted stuff that, quite frankly, I probably didn't realize as much that I needed to realize about at the time. And by the time I did realize, it was a little bit too late. And um, I I ended up on a prescription that was, to this day, I don't really know. I would say probably a little bit misprescribed, but I ended up becoming dependent on a benzodiazepam called clonazepam. Clonazepam. If I said that right. But anyhow, basically the way it works is it kind of messes with your brain chemistry, and I didn't realize it at the time because I had gotten it from a PA and I was just taking it like I was told to
it's
take it.
I'm assuming
Uh,
it's physically addictive, as I like to say, where it kind of just
um, So basically, the hard part about it was basically it was for like bad anxiety, panic attacks, things like that. But what kind of came out of it was that it's not meant to be taken like on a daily basis, and I had been just taking it just twice a day, and I had asked the doctor if that was okay, and they said yeah, and so that's what I did. But it messed with my head a lot because at first everything was great. I felt good taking it, and pretty soon I realized that when it started to wear off, like I was going from just having general anxiety to just honestly terror. It put
yeah.
me in the hospital a couple times in terms of just stuff that I thought was life threatening that ended up not being. But it was just really challenging, and really even the last year and a half, just been a process of kind of learning how to rethink, rewire my mind a little bit. I've had OCD since I was a child, like from my mom getting sick with brain cancer when I was in middle school. And so some of the things that, like I said, some of the deeper rooted stuff I didn't really quite realize at the time. It gave me a little bit of an opportunity to dig some of that up and kind of figure out why I think the way I think, and kind of things of that nature. But I mean, ultimately, with God's grace, like kind of got to the other side of it. But yeah, like when I got out of teaching, it was probably the hardest thing. It was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever made in my life because everything inside of me wanted to continue to coach, continue to teach. It is my passion. But my brain, my body at the time just couldn't handle it, truthfully. And that's when my wife and I decided to make the move to Florida. Is we had always kind of planned on getting out here eventually to raise a family, but it just happened a little quicker than we thought it would. But God's been good, and through all that, I've learned a lot for sure. But also God's taken care of us and provided everything we've needed.
Yeah, no. If I'm being completely honest, during this time, I could tell you, you know, you were going through a rough mental state or mental time. It was kind of sad to be honest. You know, having you as a coach and always experience you as an uplifting person, and then just kind of seeing it start to trickle down, I guess, and you know, start to see all your stress and anxiety begin to weigh in on you. And honestly, what I originally thought it really was the fact that you know, kind of students don't really care about being at school. And you were a very passionate person about coaching, teaching, and all that. And this is why you know people used to say that you kind of chose favorites. I chose to disagree. I like to say that Coach Newcomer favored the people that actually cared about being there. You know, you like the people that actually enjoyed being in your classes, actually enjoyed going out to cross country and running, or you enjoyed the people that even if they didn't enjoy it, they would do it because they were in a healthy environment, so they would, you know, be happy to be there, just despite the running, right? And I began to notice that, you know, I forgot. I overheard some conversation about how your classes were always, you know, just people weren't listening, people weren't paying attention, and like I told you, I always heard the same conversation that you know students kind of just didn't really care about being in class too much. And I began to realize that's you know where a big toll of it could have been coming from, just simply the fact that I feel like you're a very passionate you know teacher, a very passionate person, and I feel like just seeing students not care about the same passions and not care about the same thing, or just simply like disregard the knowledge despite it being something that they have to learn to pass high school. You know, I feel like that had a bit of it, but yeah, finding that out and finding out the whole you know the whole thing with the pill. Um, honestly, I'm not too surprised after doing a bit of research on you know chemicals and drugs and what they kind of do to the brain. I've learned that a lot of things are psychologically addictive, which means, or no, physically addictive. There's two kinds of addiction: physical and psychological. And psychological means that you're just going back to it because you want to. So what it is that there's something going on in your life that makes you feel like you have necessity for something, so you're going to continue to feed your body with that. But I learned that a physical addiction is literally your brain changing its chemical compounds to receive a certain amount of drug, or to continue to receive that drug, or it's weird. It's I learned that one of the antidepressants we were learning about in psychology was or just you know street drugs was Molly, and I remember Miss Carnes. I'm not sure if or I think you knew Miss Carnes. Yeah, amazing teacher, and she straight up told us she's like I don't believe in lying to y'all about what drug does to the mind. I think that you know the effects of a true the true effects of a drug is you know scary on itself, and she told us that like things like antidepressants that have similar chemical compounds to Molly, what they do is they actually release all your serotonin at once. So it's basically just you know best way I can put it is like you have a cup of marbles, and whenever your serotonin is released, it's like those marbles are spilt, but your brain what it naturally does it just picks the marbles back up and puts them back in the system, so you can have that euphoric high that you get from you know getting happy. You can have that serotonin release. But what those drugs do is that they make you release all your serotonin at once, and then they deplete your body of serotonin, where your body won't make it anymore, won't take that serotonin back until you get that next, you know, high.
When I was
But
gonna, I was just gonna chime in and say, ultimately, with all of those things, the best way to put it is typically people come in with some kind of issue, and because of whatever that psychological issue is that they're dealing with, um, their brains function in a certain way where it might be lacking serotonin, whatever, whatever. And I'm not all into the chemicals and can name everything,
Yeah,
but basically what's happening is you're already somebody that your brain's already weak in that area because it doesn't know how to process something how it's supposed to, and rather healing it the natural way in terms of learning how to work through that and learning how to think correctly and learning how to process whatever that trauma is that's causing that. What basically most drugs do are they're like it's like putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, but to make matters worse, like what you're doing is you're taking somebody's brain that's struggling to struggling to function in a certain way, and you're almost handicapping it by giving it a crutch. And then when that crutch is no longer there, it's almost like you go from having an issue to now like having a bigger issue because your brain doesn't know how to process what's going on. And I know at least for me, like during the last year and a half, some of the harder lessons have been just learning how to like process stuff, learning how to kind of rest with stuff, sit with it, and not not react to it. It really is amazing how the mind works, and it's how God created it. But yeah,
it,
I
it
definitely Western medicine is, and I mean, I not to be that person that's it's like I don't know enough about medicine. I haven't studied it enough to sit here and have a you know doctor's opinion on it either.
yeah,
But all at the same time, and that being said, I mean, I've seen it do wonders for people, and my mom's a result of my mom being alive today is probably a result of modern medicine. So, it's not that all Western medicine and modern medicine is necessarily evil and bad. I think it
it's
has its
misused.
place, but it's definitely overprescribed, and a lot of times problems aren't treated the right way. Um, rather than getting counseling and learning how to kind of work through some of the trauma, a lot of times I think the pill is just the easy out, which can be a pretty detrimental thing for some people.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and that's why honestly I can't wait till you read that book I sent you, the one about stoicism, because a lot of their ideology feeds into just not reacting to anything. They believe that the whole point of life is to be happy at all times. I like to disagree. I like to think that you're only supposed to get emotional about the right things. You know, family member dying, that's hurt because that's the loss of a loved one. Losing something you love, I think that's something that you deserve to get upset about. But their whole ideology is just not reacting to anything, and I think it's an insane idea because whenever you do the science behind philosophy, it kind of makes sense. Not sure if you know what happens to your body when you stress out. You probably do. But what it naturally does is that your blood naturally inflates. And this is where a lot of health conditions and a lot of unhealthy things come from, just from natural inflammation done just by simply being in, I think, your automatic nervous system, which is your fight or flight. And that's why I've recently been a lot more into nature and a lot into going outside because you'll learn that humans aren't meant to live in a society, especially not at all times. You'll learn that there's a study done by this one guy in Minnesota where he studied why people were going through the woods and taking a longer route despite it adding 30 minutes to the drive instead of just going straight through the city, and he found out that whenever people looked at an image of an office building or of a school or of a car, that it was their body would naturally react by going into fight or flight mode versus just being calm and relaxed. Whenever they see a photo of a tree, nature, flowers, their body would naturally be relaxed and calm. But just simply the image of being in an office building would give them stress and would simulate their fight or flight reaction, which I found insane. And it was like you were saying, with the whole idea of they like to call it pseudoscience, or it's just a very unresearched science. But
Hmm.
it's the idea that you can control anything with the ability of your mind. Like it's all just chemical compounds that your brain creates by itself. So it's like if you're feeling sad or depressed for an extended period of time, it's kind of up to you to break free from that cycle. And I just find it insane that if you take the time to just, like they say, meditate, take a deep breath, just find something to be happy about, then that's where, it takes the stress away. It's like I like to think about it like, if there's something out of my control, I like to give it up to God. It's out of my hands, it's out of my power. It's like, if I trip and fall right now, am I gonna be mad about the fact that I trip and fell? I'm gonna be mad about the fact that, I tripped and fell by my own actions. And am I really gonna be mad at myself for something I can't control? So I rather just give it up to God and be like, it's just a bump of life. And I think that this is why a lot of people in my generation face a lot of depression, a lot of, anxiety and simple fears, and just simple, just a lot of negative emotions. It's because they don't have a higher being, a higher person, God out there to believe in. So they'll just, see the problems of the world, or they'll view something negative and they'll think it's up to them to fix it, and then they realize they can't fix it, so now they feel powerless. And I think it's just important to, believe in some sort of God, some sort of higher power. I think that, once you start getting into religion, is where I like to think it's better to be more of a spiritual creature than just stick to one religious book. Pick and choose from everything, because everything kind of has wisdom. But yeah, I find it insane that you said that you've been spending the past couple months just figuring yourself out, figuring out your OCD and all that. And how's that been going for you?
It's been good. Like I said, I mean, it's been a process. If I've learned anything in the last year, it's the idea that I'm not in control of what happens and learning how to let go of it. I've spent so much of my life trying to control every little detail of it, and you spend enough time playing basketball for me and running cross country and track that you're probably well aware of that. And I think it's good to control what you can control, to a sense. But at the end of the day, it's funny, I always used to preach the idea of, you have control of your attitude and your effort, and that's all you have control over. But the big irony in it is, I really struggled. I struggled in the areas that I didn't have control over, and I think that's a big part of where I struggled at as an individual. And just kind of over the last year, I think God's very much shown me that not only am I not in control of things, but my need for Him and just every aspect of life. Recognizing that every breath that I have and every day I wake up is a gift from God, and not something that I do out of my control, but something that's ultimately in His hands, right? I go to bed at night, obviously. I don't control my breathing. I don't control, I don't control my heartbeat. It's like, like when you start to really step back a little bit, you realize, like, no, like, ultimately, God's in control of, like, what's going on and is sovereign over my life. Because, um, quite frankly, like, we think we have control in a lot of things, but we don't, and I think that's one of the real reasons that every time someone passes away suddenly, or there's a death, sometimes it's funerals are just eye opening to people, because kind of coming to terms and coming to realization that, it's like we're not in control of everything. We ultimately, each day that we're given is a gift, and um, we have to view it that way for sure.
I love that ideology. Um, if there were one, if there were one thing you'd like to change, to make you a teacher again, or for you to want to consider, coaching or teaching again, what would it be?
Um, who knows? That's a tough one. I hope in someday down the road, if Lord willing, Dare and I are able to have a family, I would love to get to coach my children, sons, daughters, in sports. That's something I'd really love to do. Rowlett was really a unique situation for me. Um, it was home to me, and a lot of people that I truly love and care about a lot, and taught me through the years. A community that kind of raised me, more or less, and It was kind of a unique, special opportunity. I don't know if I'd ever really look to get back into the public school system outside of being at Rowlett, just because it was, like I said, unique. But just the chance to mentor, to coach, I think that that just in general the idea of it to do it like in terms of an official role, it's something I'd like to do. But I think even in an unofficial role, it's like there's people that I believe that on some level I mentor and help out to this day, and here and there, it's like I get to coach people with stuff and tutor people, and so um, it's not something that it's just kind of part of who you are once you start doing it, I think. And I'll be the first person to say I don't have like the greatest God given leadership abilities, but what I do have is I do care a lot about it, and I think that's always served me well in it for sure.
Yes, sir. Um, if you had to say what's the biggest thing that pushes you away from the school system, or you know, working for public schools?
Um, it's a good question. I don't think as much of it is related to public school itself. Um, I think there are, just like everything in life, I think there are issues and things that could be better. But I think a lot of the real issue is a society. Is a society we're a broken society with broken homes, broken families, and um, we're not equipped to do some of the things that we know we need to do as teachers. Can make that challenging at times. I know just between some of the stuff that's in place, I know like as a teacher, it's like it's hard kind of the balance of doing the right thing and doing the doing things by the book. They can be two different things at times, and I think that's a challenge. But overall, I think the hardest part is just you have a lot of broken kids coming in, and it's a big burden at times. There's nothing more rewarding in life than teaching and coaching, and I would tell everyone that, and I believe that. But at the same time, there's a big emotional toll that takes on you too. I know I came home, and there are a lot of things that just rocked me as a teacher, as a coach, just things that I had to take home with me in terms of things that kids were struggling with, things that I saw, just some of the brokenness that you see each day. It's emotionally taxing, and so like I said, it's not forever. It's not that I'd never do it again. It's just more that emotionally and mentally, I think a big part of it is I just needed a break from it too.
Yeah, I think a big issue of our school system and our school district in general is, we're not necessarily our district, but just our whole education system, is the fact that we don't teach morals at school. You don't teach someone how to be a good person. It's expected to be taught at home. But a lot of kids come from a negative environment or a bad place, and they don't necessarily feel like they can open up to this about with somebody.
Hmm.
And I think it's important for every single student to understand that whatever environment they come out of, they should be able to go to school and be happy. And it's just about that. It's the fact that if you separate, being at work versus or being at home versus being at school, and you start going to school to enjoy school and be happy. Well, maybe if you actually enjoy listening to your teachers or actually enjoy talking to them, maybe you'll actually learn something. I think it's a big shift from just being upset about school or just having the mentality that school sucks to having the idea that school can be exciting or be entertaining. But I won't take up too much of your time, Coach Newcomer. We'll go ahead and end it here. Hope you all enjoyed this podcast. It looks like we're pushing about 30 minutes. Yeah. Hope you all have a great night.
All right. Have a good one.